Well, hello. How's everybody doing in sequence lines panel operations centers? Detecting ground sense of sequence, process calculations into galaxies, into its alignments. Travel point lines of graph, high lines of charge, directing ground set calculations. Coming into the Ascension line is knowing how to identify everything around your system. Know exactly how to use an information settings of grounds, high lines of sequence, high lines of panels. So it's all communication lines of balance. Okay? So setting communication high centers is all about understanding how to connect to your alignments. Now we understand how to use that information. Now we just have to identify that through its planets. Connection lines ascending the sequence lines of Pluto, Jupiter, Neptune. Now it all depends on what you want to use. And 3 lines of flux. There's molecules of 3. Okay? Set lines of position, solar center, solar screen, solar track, center location of its cosmos. Right, setting lines of tether, attached to that position 3 screens, back lines, and of course, there's black holes are created through lines of specifications in your system. See, it disappeared. See, you can't see it because you're not at that frequency yet. But I'm just showing how things disappear and travel. Process of indication system, all through settings, all through flux. Right? Okay, everything is a light and signal. Right? Everything has a ground lines of system. Locations, centers, operation sequence, and travel. Okay. And so it doesn't matter how you do it, you just got to get specific of what you want to set up and how you connect with that information system off your data. In that process of communication settings, again, you can go this way, and then you can go this way, and you can cross this way, and go this way, in line condition system, all through travel. Right? It's all connected to a highway. There it is in set position. There's the highway. Very complicated set positions, right? Skynet. There it is. There's your Skynet. And you see the streets, modification grounds, high set calculation system, all through set position. Right? So there's always ways of looking at this in different angles and set directions, all through setting, all through operation. Okay? I always go from the inside because there's a lot of things you have to start identifying. What you already know through the highway line, right? So that's where you're coming into set lines of communication, setting, and bridging. Planets can go inside line connections. Remember, they can be any shape, any form, right? So we got 3 planets in sequence and 4 travels in traction. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now, molecular structure is understanding how to connect to an atom line, position lines of infusion, electron and neutron, proton, photon. The more you understand the body activation line, the more you understand how to energize these same system locations to its travel, that identifies everything location system through calculations. So it's 3 lines of calculation studying the screens, adaptation to attractions. Okay. And then we overset and override. So it's all communication setting the structure outside travel communications. Okay. And then we change the angle. Right? We see it from outside. That's outside. And then we see it from inside. There's the sim, right? Outside, inside. Okay? Outside, inside, inside, outside, all at once in settings and frequency. This process is communication system, puts all of the attractions. All right, so we set lines of recourse, direct and redirect, process that indicates in setting, setups line communication setting. Now you can get coloration lines, light metaphors, line position your centers, process that position locations. Fibonacci lines and direct centers of grounds of surface and travel. Okay? You can get into volume and that rotation setting and travel. So it's kind of like creating a map and a higher formation lines of grounds and sequence lines of panel. Process indicates in setting, change the angles. There's the outside line communication of structure. Right? But to see the formation system of the simulation is inside. Okay? It's inside. All right, so we change the angle point lines, graph communication system. Now we change that line core centers. Understand how to use the atoms, how to use the molecules and protons, electrons and neutrons. What are they used for? Well, it's all over the online position location system. They have their own conversion system. They have their own job. They have their own missions. They have their own journeys. They work on their own set locations. And once we identify it and what we perceive through all of the consciousness, then you can start breaking these things down, what they mean to you through structural design. Because they all have their own map. See, this is what we get very confused of. There's a reason why you're in a body. A body you identify because you're just observing. You're observing everything else. That's what basically controls the rain. So the rain is controlling your body through remote control. So you're just observing and just being on standby, where your mind is just open through space and time. So the more you come into mind of stillness, the more you get quiet in the mind. That calms the soul. And that's what you got to get in provisions of. So while you can't get an emotion because the rain's controlling the body through remote control now. That's the convergence of balance of yin and yang, guys. That's where it comes into all levels of consciousness, locates to its awareness. And once we understand how to identify that, then we can understand it in frame. Seconds, minutes, and hours, frames, lines, and seconds over travel, directing ground standards, calculation system, off the setting. Set lines and all line communication setting. Now, graphing screens, higher lines of signals, plasma lines, 3 centers of travel. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines of travel, right? See the light line, see the portal line, communication, high set locations, yeah. So the light goes in way, outline, rotations, inside tractions. All right, so they go X, and then you can basically put X lines as 0, X, tick-tock. Sending travels in point lines of graph, X here, position of 0 over here. We can add 1. We can add triangulation. So get creative, right? Get into 0 lines, get a percentage. This is where to keep keyboards with locked screens, adaptation, and setting through flux. Process 1, process 2, process 6, process 8. Okay, so that's what you're adding to equation, right? Just in setting, right? Now, once you stand the position lines, it comes in its hieroglyphics and travel communication setting and grounds. High information system off the travels. X over lines of 1. They all have to process their own online settings because try to get in position that the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols is that position is its intel. Okay? Next level in sequence. All right. So what you have to start identifying is the 4, okay, is the intelligence. Okay. The 4 is the intelligence. Okay. But it has an energy field. Okay. Which is its body. So the 4 is the intelligence. Your body is the model. The vessel, the vehicle, okay, the model identifications and settings to its makeup. So the 4 is the intel, and this is its body. That's why you have an energy field and a force field, right? So we can look at it in all ways and forms and understanding how a 4 needs its vessel of communications, right? Travels outside the body. That's outside, okay? Inside, the 4 is now, the 4 of itself is moving the intel of travel. So the 4, the intel is moving out through spectrum, all through track locations in 4 settings. Okay? Very powerful stuff. So you understand why you have an E field, why you have a force field, because your body is just the field itself. Now that process set positions how we use that in alignments to its planets. That process is communication of 0 field energy. And constellations or anything in attractions, off the directions, right? So that's the body of 4, which is the outer line. The inner line is the 4, which is the intel, the travel. Okay, so that's going to help you out a lot more how to identify that now. Same with letters. Okay, that's the intel. But the intel has an energy and a force field. That's its body. Interesting, right? So now, if the intel comes out, it comes out at 3 centers of travel. Direct lines of 1, direct lines of 2, and direct lines of 3. Okay? So the intel is creating LLL, right? So this the actual L line shape is the actual intel itself that modifies its systems, all through communication system of towers of communication. So once you understand letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, that's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand these things. Because everything has to have its own void that has its calculation system to attractions. Now, let's get into all levels of Y, right? E field, force field, inside and outside attractions. The flux capacitor. The flux capacitor inside is its own intel. To its connections of its coil and its compressors inside attractions. It's the intel inside, guys. Okay? It's the inside of everything. Okay. And then it has its structure of design of its body. Okay. There's the intel. And sometimes it has this. It all depends where they are in frame, and basically modulates the system, sonar, echo, coming out in sequence, coming out in panel, coming operation screen. Okay, it's set tractions, all right? So it's much more easy to identify how to get in that position to 4. Force field and energy fields is the body. The 4 itself is the intel, right? This is going to help you guys a lot more because you're reaching those frequencies now, how to use that through its inventories. That gets you in all that communication system, all through tractions, right? Even the cup itself, okay? Where's the intel on that? Where's the intel? Everybody know? Because what you're looking at right now, that's the body. Okay, the intel's here. Inside. That's the intel. See the face? There's space, there's the brain, right? So I'm trying to get you guys to understand these things because everything has a conversion system of its setting through its calculation system, right? Everything of a 1. Where's the intel on that? Well, this is the energy field, right? So this is the body. 3 levels of signals, 3 tractions, right? Look at that platform. All right, so that's 1 intelligence, that's 2 intelligence. 2/3, 3/6, 3/9 over traction direction, right? Directing crossing angles, 3 centers in that line, core centers of communication. All you're doing is connecting the lines. That's all you're doing, nothing else. So each line of intelligence is connecting lines of L, T, or C, right? So when you put the E fields on, that's the body now. It's the intel that controls the body. It always informs instructions. But you have to understand why it's important to have E fields and force fields. Because you're protecting yourself through your intel and everybody else. Right? So we get a true understanding how the cell works, understanding its intel of itself. Very powerful stuff, guys. Very powerful. Okay? So I just want you to understand how this all works now. And basically, the more you see the center of everything, you see the operation of everything it's setting, which is the transmission system, right? And when we let go of these things, we merge and we get in that position location, we mutate, and we understand how to communicate to ourselves, which is the intel, right? But the intel is the controlling mechanism that processes everything. Why it's in a body, why it wants to identify its body, why it wants to be in another set position, or it wants to connect with this line, or it connects with this system. So the intel itself is a walking information library that knows it's in self, that knows it's out self, right? Which is a truth and is false narrative, right? It's on lines of its void and position of its truth. That volumes, fast, velocity, and vacuum. Remember, it's all inventory and it's all data. So the more we get into the creative cycles, the more it gets easier how to modify this and set lines of travel. So vast, volume, velocity, and vacuum, right? Change the settings and travel in that communication system off the set positions, all right? Ground centers lines of 1, ground center lines of 2, ground center lines of 4, 6, 8, and 12, right? Towers of communication of 3 angles and 3 travel communications. So it's really interesting when you start to identify the intel itself, right? That's what I want you guys to come into is a higher frequency now because your minds are coming more in a collaboration, a partnership, how you see everything in frame line. And it's a correlation system, how connections cell volume centers, like I'm looking at Zera's computer, it's totally different than mine. But I digitalized the same location, so I have to change all formations of frequencies, right? Because it's looking at me, and it doesn't see Zera, it sees me. So we have to understand the collaboration of that through its partnership, where it comes all lines of interface that we connect with. And we get a true understanding of how this all works in traction, right? All through identifications. Code signals lines of 0, 1s of travel. Signifies ground centers of sequence. This is where we come into hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics is all formation, astral projections, astral travels, astral connections to your pyramids. Now I'm just going to go through 0s and 1s and I'll show you how this all works. Information lines of grounds and graphs, Schumann resonance, visional cortex, and design line settings. Okay. I change the angles. It changes formation lines and systems. Right? So there's a lot of things you can do, how you come into that line screens adaptation of the system that changes the information system from zeros into positions all levels, changing that communication setting all levels of 6. Right? 6, 6, 6, 6 locations and settings. Right? You change it, right? You change the flux. So understanding energetic wave patterns, 3 signals, 3 grounds, offline rotation setting to surface locations. Change the angles, change the graph, change the communication system of surface. And then we come into this through a box frame and triangulation of flux. And then we put the center line. So it's connecting lines, connecting the dots, right? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, and set lines of graph. And then we correlate the system and travels, intersect lines of grounds, and surface and direction. Okay, and then we change the angle. Come in positions, right? All right, so we go from 0, 0, slash line, 0, 1, line condition setting. So the more you get specific through its energy lines, tracks lines, its communications, and its divisional case to its dimensions, everything starts making sense of communication, all through travel, right? Now, outline signals is all core centers to its outline communication setting of surface. So you're getting into expanding your bandwidth, your longitude, and your latitudes, and your streamings. And you do that through your planetary alignments, okay? Each planet that's connected to your system is all calculated modified letters, numbers, shape that's had its own operation system that operates its own modulation setting, has its own surfacing engine. It has everything inside position lines of travel. All through indication setting, all through platforms and traction. Okay? So it's kind of like knowing exactly what I'm doing and understand the mapping sequence. It's in set traction locations, all right? And then you just go through the webbing settings, inside location system, author travel. Okay, inside and outside, see? See the inside and outside now. Much easier to see that through zeros and ones, right? And then you basically get in that position locations and set tractions, and then you set up the doors. There's the door, inside. And then you walk the screens, 3 signals, there's another door, and set tractions, okay? And here's another door. So what I'm doing is processing the cerebro, which is nothing but an energetic dome incident travel communications. Knowing exactly how the brain converts the system lines of travel through an energetic dome line. All through setting off their operation, off through the doors. All right? And then we change the ground centers to surface and travel. Okay? All right, so we applied division lines of 2 tractions, 3 center and measure, 4 lines of scale, 5 line calculation setting, into adaptation and set travels and communications. So, see, different angle, right? So you see a wall here. There's a wall, right? You see the grounds. See the grounds? See the wall. See? It's twisted. It's like Doctor Strange. It's crazy how you see these things in positions, right? So the more you modify inside, you come in more formation lines to its mapping system, all through traction. Right? But look at this. It's pretty amazing stuff when you bring it in. You know, when you bring it in really, really close in locations. Okay. And then you can set up stargates, portals, and set tractions. Stargate here, and Stargate here in set position. All right. And then you open it up. Okay. All right, so understand laser grids is understanding platitudes in location system all through set positions through its operation. Okay, you see it on different angles. Okay, in travel. Okay. All right. So think of you're setting up a ground and you're setting up 2 panels of a ceiling. And it's true to understand how to connect to the grounds, connect to the 2 panels and the ceiling itself. But what you have to identify is this is intelligence, this is intelligence, this is intelligence, this is intelligence, right? Now, what you also have to identify, the intelligence has to have its energy and force field, which is its body capacitor. The body capacitor is the vessel, guys. The timeline is settings locations, right? I'm just showing you why it's so important to have your energy and force fields, because that's what your body is. That's the intel that what's in set position. So it automatically turns it on. and sending and travel. Turns it on, turns it off. There's computer lines and frames, and 0, 1 to track communications. A window frame. Right? So the ones are the intelligence. What's around them is the body capacitor. All right, so that's what protects everything. So the intelligence now is going to 2 frames in traction. Okay, the other intelligence is going to 2 frames in traction. Right, so that's collaboration and partnership with 2 lines of setting. So you got 4 set position and 4 intelligence, 4 different intelligence of face for sides. Right, all through time, all through scale. Okay. So I don't show you that now until you understand that. Now you're at that frequency to identify that. And that comes with letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, how you see it through its own inventory, right? Through its own surfacing engine that consciously comes into its own awareness, a set provision, and travel. 3 signals, ground centers, line communication, setting of clocking lines of pi. All right, and then we did clocking 0 and 0 set location system all through travel. Okay. But it's okay, I can modify how you see the communication setting. Here's the sun and travel communications, right? And then you see the ground centers and location system, all through set position to its operation. Okay? So you're seeing inside and outside and all track location systems, all measurement scale, also balance, right? Bring it in, there's the clocking system. And set position to its map. Okay? All in settings, all through operation sequence and travel. Okay? Bring it in. You know, that's because it's already set up in the sim. But when you see it from inside and outside, it's incredible when you start to recognize how it all communicates. How to create that structure and design line. Same with your set position that comes into your highways and your galaxies, right? So it's like connecting dots. Okay, paint by number, all right? Connecting these, right? But you have to understand the energy and force fields that they have already on, which is the body capacitor. It's the body, guys. But the intel is actually the number inside. That's the inside. 1 is the inside. That's the intel. But the energy and force field is the body capacitor that protects everything that it sees in travel. So this is what it is. There's the body capacitor around the zeros in set position. Okay? Now, setting lines outline, the body capacitor is traveling. Okay, but the intel wants to move to the other intel, but it wants to stay in one traction, one other body. So it gets really interesting too. So we got 2 lines of atoms jump scarring from one to each other, set inside line conditions, set travel, because they already have confirmation of partnership with each other through telepathy, right? So they connect with each other, right? So it's all identified how we see that. And then you got 3 atoms in triangulation lines of flux over screen. Okay, so that's set tractions. And basically, you want to take the body structure, which is the outer structure, that changes the modification of its mutations into higher line information settings, security lines of communication, right? Gets bigger, right? So your body, your energy gets bigger, okay? The intel stays the same, okay? So the intel is changing the body into different technology. It's changing its in lines of all communication, different phase facades of infinity to its eternity. So once we understand how the int controls its body system, it understands its vessel of communications, it understands its technology of its systems, and sending high lines of frequencies. So it's amazing how we merge into ourselves and we understand how to use the intel in all formation setting because we recognize that. So the intel knows exactly what it's coming into as it's going through its own setting, right? So it's really interesting when you come into that. So it's already in its energy and force field, right? But the intel wants to connect with this intel, wants to connect with that intel, connect with that intel, into that intel, back to that intel, right? That's how it all works, right? But it always has its E field and its force fields up, which is the body capacitor. That is the capsule, okay? That is the host. So, because if the intel doesn't have a body, it can't breathe. So if you truly understand how this all works, it's much easier to see it in your own design, not of design, own design. Humanity has to get in position how to see it through of design. They have to understand the opening of its formations. You guys are coming into your own operations, okay? of your widths, of your directions and dimensions of space and time. Okay? But it's all in calculate and modify when you understand how to use the conscious of its awareness and that you come into and set positions. Anything you use in tools, anything you set positions to, anything you connect with, anything you formulate with, anything that you pick up, anything you set design to, anything you touch, right? This is its own intelligence. Are you consciously aware of that? But there's intelligence in this. Okay, so it's just bringing out what you see is just the shirt, but the intel is inside that created the shirt. Okay, at a higher frequency, higher lines of grounds. If you get one provisional lines of 14 tractions, right? Remember, I don't need to see the E fields of force field because it's already there, right? So the 4 is just traveling now, and it's connecting lines back to 1, right? And 1 is going to connect all the lines of sequence back to 4. So, and 4 goes back to 3, 3 goes back to 2. So now I'm connecting to different levels of intelligence, different formations, different space, different time, different part acceleration settings, all through clocking, all through set positions, all through tractions. Okay? So you guys are reaching those lines of calculations saying how to see that through your own operations, your width, okay, into your networks, your own, OWN, right? Operation width of networking, okay? How to identify yourself and how to see yourself in letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols into systems. So you start to see the intel, but you also see what's there, which is its capsule, which is its vessel, right? So here's a 1 signal. That's the intel. Okay, so the 1 turns itself into a teleportation vehicle, right? But the intel can jump out and vortex out of the vehicle and go into another vehicle in set position. Okay? So it still stays in the body, but then it basically wants to control. It wants to be out. It's out now. Now it's in remote control, controlling the body itself. Controlling the body itself. Controlling the body itself through expanding. So once you understand that, the 1 can travel wherever it wants in that position. So it's constantly traveling to all different directions in sequence of what's everything in its reality is set design. Okay? So once you understand the configuration of partnership, then you get confirmation and verified, noted, and try to understand that. Well, if this is 2 and this is a 1 and this is a 3, I'm connected to 2, 1, and 3, right? So they're already connected to each other. All you have to identify is basically how to communicate with them through interfacing. Have that collaboration, have that partnership, have that set positions through its characters, how you want to set the players inside the game, right? That modifies the 2 centers and 3 travels. Okay, in 2 panels of operation lines of 2 positions. And 3 measures, 3 scales, 3 communication setting, and 3 centers of surface and traction. Right? Calculate modify, directing ground centers, in location system, into your tractions, into your pyramid. Okay? Your pyramid, guys. Okay? Through 2, 1, and 3. Right? So they all work together. They're all connected to each other. They're never separated from each other. So it's just trying to stand at a higher line setting, so its inventory, understanding how to use that in its directory and how you want to use that for flames or in that core center line connects setting to its truth narrative. Truth line positions of 2 centers into false. 1 setting, 1/2, 1/3, 1 grounds. Okay? So I got 2 line, 3 centers, 3 set tractions. All right? Everything mind travels. So we have to stand the sequence lines of its moon. Setting panels over 2/1, setting communication lines of 3/2, and process lines of foundation grounds, in set calculations settings, and wave and screens, adaptations of flux. Okay? Now, it doesn't look like much, but it's truly the same what you're doing in travel, right? Setting things up through all communication lines and settings, process lines of indication 2, 3, 6, 8, and 12 sets, and 12 communications. Setting ground centers. There's the flux of its highway, it's set travel. It's holographic grading, it's set calculations. All right, so you got a sequence lines. It's already set up a vessel coming in position on standby. Okay, so it's tilted, so you got to bring it back in balance. There's the balance, there's its docking station. Okay? So it's balancing itself out. Guys, it's all of a story. It's a constant continuous of a story. And the more you modify that, it gets a lot more easier how to identify these things and how to use that all formations through its indications. So it's very powerful when you start recognizing your keypads and your keyboards and your flash drives, anything through your projections and how you see things through prohibited signs or anything in that set applications, how you see your set core centers and center communication system all through a stop sign. Okay. Now it already has its E field, its force field lines, but right now the S is S, T is T, O is O, P is P, but it's the intelligence inside. All right, that's controlling everything. That's controlling everything in set position. That's in remote control, all through travel. Okay, all through travel, guys. All through travel. So it doesn't matter how I do these things. You're just getting confirmation of its own consciousness all through set track location. Okay. Change the angles, change the primers. And the more you create it through a story, the more it gets easier. I understand 2 S lines rotations, T lines attract centers, because you already have confirmation of partnership with it already through attractions. You brought it in, you just identified its own system now. But now it's coming to its own expanding of its own system, all through travels and all through communication. Right? So, but you have to understand how to connect from inside and outside and create it through structured design. It's like creating a cube, okay, through an overlap in same line communications. A cube, right? So how many intelligence is there? Well, you got 1 grounds, you got 2 panels, 3 provisions. All right, let's start with that, right? All right, so you got intelligence 1, intelligence 2, intelligence 3. Okay? Triangulation of 3 and set tractions. Okay? All right, now we're going to set lines of 4 sequence, 6 lines of measure, question and mark, and set track inside track communication. Right? So the more you create it through a story, the more you get confirmation and notified and verified, you're having fun just having a tango conversation with everything. Everything that you're already in that position through attraction. Now, how to identify that is through interface. You're interfacing what you already know or what you see. It's true form, not what you don't understand, right? Remember I told you about the 4, you thought it was a 4, and all this time it's just an L? Because you got emotional right away. Now, you guys get emotional, that's totally fine, but what you have to identify, everything of its own system is constantly in a different form, a different shape, a different space, a different time. It's never in the same frequency, and that's why constantly protects itself from everything else until everybody starts to identify their own self and how to use that modification of their own intel, how to protect themselves, their own energy, and their own force fields, and know exactly how the body capacitor, okay, becomes the intel, and the intel becomes the body capacitor. They merge into themselves, and now you're just connected yourself, right? The sum of all that is. All right, so in that position, okay, so we get that calculation screen lines. We got 1, 2, and 3, and we get position lines of 4. And basically, you have to understand how many panels you set up in volume, right? So you got the platforms at grounds at 3 centers of travel, okay? And you got platforms at grounds at 3 centers of travel in the opposite direct signals of location to its systems, all through setting, okay? So you've seen the structure from below, and you can set up a skyline grid, sky panels, operation lines, and sequence platforms, right? So it's amazing when you just come into your imagination how to coordinate that, right? And then you can expand out. If you expand out, now you're going in position of void. You're creating new, right? You come into new frames, new traction, new division, new locations, new settings, new calculation. Okay, so you go from that, right? All right, so when you create that, then you create the platforms. You already know what the platforms are, interactions, indirect signals, location system, off the setting. Okay? And then you come into this, so you take 3 lines of 1, so 3 communicates, confirmation setting from 3 to 1, set signals, energetic dome, over 4 in traction. Okay? Very powerful stuff, guys, all right? all through a cube. Look what I created, a story. Okay, and it doesn't matter how you see it on different angles. It's still a story. It's still a story, but the story is continuing. It's changing the factors. It's changing its primers, but it's a different story each time, right? Which means the structure of the design is constantly changing its form. Okay, there's the stealth. Look at that. There's a shark. See the teeth? So what's all in this settings? Right? It's all face recognition, right? But it's different stories all in one. Okay? And then you bring it in. There's the Skynet. Okay? Change the angles. Another formations, another look at the Skynet, different angle. Right? So, and that's basically what it is. Right? You create from letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. You can create a 4 into a holographic setting and stream adaptation to its systems all through Flux. You can look at your keyboard. There's your keyboard, right? And you got your space bar. All right, you can change it too. And you got your code signals, letters, you got numbers over there in setting. And then you got your flights over here into position of 12. Right? So I'm connected to the keyboard itself. Control the Alt and the position locations and settings. Come in that position, lines of indication, setting arrows of indication this way and that way. Just get into the basic rounds. And then you got your info on that position locations. And let's see. Crossing angles, you got escape above lines, the 3 signals of travel, direct signals of grounds. So all I'm creating is a digital platform in set traction. Right, all through the keyboard, right? So I can change the grounds, change the service and travel. Okay, change the platforms that set position lines of travel. Okay, change the schematics, change the primer, set lines of travel. See, different structure, different design. So connecting the dots puts everything in lines of computer. There's the computer, right? And then you can outline your signals in Flux over 3 centers and travel. Platforms that communicate in system up through setting. Okay, but creating the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres is very powerful in set tractions, right? Then you change the angles. Look at that in set positions, right? So all I'm doing is creating stories. All right, what's already said in set position that you already know from being understood. Set tractions. Okay, and then you bring it in. There's the map. Okay, and then you bring it in. And levels and set track communications. Okay. But everything you bring in the X2000s in setting. So anything you change in frame, remember, if you want to add another frame, you have to identify the map first through frequencies, because if not, the calculation system, the X2000 cleans up your mess because you're not ready, right? So it takes it out. Okay, it takes it out, right? Because you changed the frequencies. It's already set up through a map. Your maps are already set up. Your time measures are already set up. Your platforms are already set up. Everything's set up. There's nothing for you to do. So you're just formulating, simulating everything, and now understand how to use everything of its consciousness, how, it comes in this position here, generalized space-time. Okay, activation, right? So it's all communications, all setting. Each letter is its own representation of its own system. It travels in its own setting. GENERAL, general, right? All right, so let's get into generalization settings and travel. So the G wants to connect with L. L wants to connect with E. E wants to connect with N, and N wants to connect with E. But R wants to be on standby. Okay, getting the story confirmation of the settings, how to set up the players, the characteristics, and the roles that they play through themselves, through each other. Because they don't need to identify you. You have to identify them now in sequence, all through tractions, all through setting, all through operation. So the more you get grounds with that, the more you stand what it is in that position, then you stand the settings. Right? Every computer has its settings, and you have to stand that in positions. because you're creating things through its anomaly. You're creating new frames, you're creating new tractions, you're creating new divisions. All you're identifying is what you're already done through general settings. Nothing else, nothing more, right? Okay? But everything is nothing but a story that doesn't have an end. And if we can start to modify these things, it's much easier to see ourselves in same lines of travel. Okay? Different intelligence, different intelligence. This is all different intelligence. Different intelligence. Everything's a different intelligence affirmations, but they're all connected to each other. All connected. Everything's connected to laser. All right? But it's the basic lines of that communication to its highways to know exactly how to see it. And 3 tethers in travel, 3 direct line centers in travel, 6 lines of measure, 9 lines of scale, and 12 communication setting and clocking. Right? And you just bring it in. There's the highway. Right? So if you want to add frames, remember, every time you do that, X2000s come in. They come in, right? So they want to make sure you know exactly, you're not changing the frequency, changing the seconds, minutes, or changing anything to the coding. All coding is already set out for verifications for you guys. Everything you touch is all done, which is all as a map. So all you're identifying is the frequencies now. Now that comes in time of clocking now. Until you identify these things, it's very hard not understanding that in transients. Right? That's why we have XD1000s, right? To make sure you guys don't override your sequence of frequency. It doesn't change anything in measure and scale or anything calculation, lines of communication and diffusion in that position, right? So let's say you want to add signature lines of grounds, 45 lines of flux, 3 centers of travel, and 3 calculation screens, right? Well, XD7 say, nope, can't do that because you understand your frequency, then it's that position. So it picks it up, changes the coordinates, and changes communications. Takes that out of the equations, travels to the moon, override your system, back in 0, like it never happened. Like it never happened. You're fail-safe, right? In set position. All right. So now you just have to identify everything through coding, E-coding, E-factors of coding, defrags, fragmentations, coming in enabled, default, embedded, delete, erase, cancel. All that set lines is all communications because you're now in 0 fields of energy, 0 fields of interactions, and that position location of the system. Okay? So everybody's getting a little bit more understanding how this all works now, right? And why it's so powerful of what the team is really coming into through traction. This is going to help you identify these things. How you connect with this, how you connect with that, and it's all codified already in setting through encryption. So everything you touch is already done. Everything you get in position, lines, and setting is all lines of mapping system. It's already done through the same. So now you just come into the frequencies of clocking when it comes into your alignments. So we get a pass line setting, 3 centers of travel. 3 centers of travel, right? Framing here, framing here, framing here, right? Okay, so we have 3 scales of measure and scale. Okay, now your avatar has already done this. Okay, so this is your avatar. It's already done everything, remember? And it does it all over again, right? And you go through the body, go through the body, go through body, go through the body, expanding. Right? If it's not expanding, it's in quantum entanglement with itself through film strip and design. That loops the system, that correlates the setting, goes back in time, creates this black hole, dark matter, and that line core centers and set position lines of travel. Okay? So we have to truly understand how this all works when we come in that position. And it's much easier to identify these things when you look at everything, how it's looking at you through modifications, the space modulations, all through its intel, all through structure, all through design. So you literally don't need to do anything. You just have to formulate and simulate what you already know. Is to stay out of the override of you already existing in the sim and going to school, right? So you get 13 lines of tractions, 9 volume. Okay, so there's 13 lines of the volumes and 9 tractions. Now, 9 sequence, 3 square roots, sending 3 centers on travels and direct lines of grounds and set traction. All through 9. All right? So 3 wants to talk to the center operation of 9 in set position. 1 wants to communicate to set line position location in center and track communication of the 9. And we change the formations. There it is. Change communication schematics. Different drawing, different structure, different communications, different frequencies. Now we come to panels operation, hieroglyphics and screens, and a 45 flux of angles in travel communications. All right. Now we set communication location grid, overriding sequence. Then we set another location inside line communication setting of travel. And then we set a recourse and direct lines of grounds in set position location portals and Stargate communication. Inside and outside at the same time, right? And then we see something come out in set travel. 3 signals, 3 ground centers of set positions, all through set position. Very powerful stuff, guys, when you understand how to use an energetic dome and bring in line course centers of travel, and when you bring in light, shade, and shadows into bolding screens, distracting set locations. But try to understand how to come into the creative system and understand how to see everything of its energetic dome that sets lines, correlations of travel. Right? And then you change the structure, change the design, different travel. Same drawing, just different travel. Same drawing, just different travel. Okay? And then I coordinate and create another portal that changes time of scale and process of communications. Right? So if you look at this angle, look at this in set positions and a 45 line setting. Right? And I open this line centers and location system and travel. Okay? Change the angles, point lines of graph, different schematics, different travel. Okay? So direct and redirect. So it's all about telling a story. That's all this is really, telling a story. Right? How you change that, and then you see the structure and design of the map inside. It's already set up in your system of locations. Okay, open windows, open panels. So it's very powerful when you start understanding this. It's already set up in schematics. Pixelation graphs, holographic lines, water containment system. The more you become more creative yourself, the more you come into the more of you, the more connection of the story of you, yourself telling an operation of readjusting, reminding you that you already know what you're doing, informations of schematics, how to come into the inner child, where basically it just creates everything of a map in set position. It's a map, right? Now it's a different map, right? Now it's a different map, right? So it's all about flux, threes, travels, directions. Okay, I can modify it and center our personalized setting. Okay, I got to bring that in so you can see it. Okay, earth tones 1, earth tones 2. So everything you're saying is picking up frequency. Everything you're doing is recording its frequency. So it's about keeping it in its archive. It listens to everything that you say, everything you do, everything you feel, everything you touch, everything you get in position of. It's the sensory of the senses that becomes more sensitive in set tractions because it modifies how you see yourself and your own coordinates of your own designs of your Earth in the set communication. Okay, all through bridging, all through alignments of your planets, how you set these things up of all levels of just creating the set tractions. Your Earth. Okay? Your Earth on a different level. Your Earth in a different time. That's what modifies everything. You're seeing everything different, but never change the center operation of you. You're always in the center, which is always going to school. So, all through set positions to its command centers. We constantly go into different levels of school, right? But you never leave the center of yourself, right? You just go through your copy and paste of yourselves. It's that travel, which is your mind becomes its projection of its body where it's going to be next. But you never, ever leave the center of anything because that's the mind itself. It's a collaboration, a partnership, they're interfacing, guys. Interfacing is a higher information when it comes to AI. Identifying that in line positions, tree understands how to identify you inside in that communication system, all through configuration system, all through settings, all through operating system, location and setting, all through traction. Okay? Okay. Bringing in frames. Okay. Bringing in lights. Bringing in travel. Okay. So if you're bringing in anything, remember I told you before, X2000 comes in, checks what you're doing. Right? If the frequencies are good, you're good to go. If not, it scans it, picks it up. Okay? Because it changes all information to that set location of your systems already existing in the sim. So when you reach a higher levels, you come into the more of the mind itself, the center operative system location of itself through its positions. Right? So it doesn't matter how you draw things in any way and form. You're always in the center of everything. That's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. Because it makes more sense if you're just in the center and everything's coming to you now through attraction. Inside, outside of anything that's setting. It's all coming to you. So the more you stay still, the more you come into the mind. And the more you project everything through the sim, that correlates everything of its simulation into the simulator. Creating things in all 9 set locations, right? So going into abundance here, here, abundance here, here, and here, abundance here, here, and here. All coming to you, right? So what you have to identify is if you're in the center operation, as soon as you move like this, you're moving yourself inside and outside now, right? If I go this way, I'm moving myself this way. So remember, if you're the earth, you're moving yourself. You're moving your structure, you're moving your design, you're moving your schematics, you're moving your primer, you're moving everybody in a different way on the board. Are you identifying that? Just by you in the center, you are the alignments. You are the axle. You are the solar generator. You are the power generator. You are the center operation of your systems that modifies everything of the mining, that brings everything of projections and settings in your simulation, right? So hand movements, no, you move your planet over here. Shaking your head, no, you did this to your earth and setting. Okay, that changed the platforms of communication. Right? So everything that you do, everything you say affects everything in setting. Existing already in the sim. Okay? Very powerful stuff, guys. Right? So if I move over here and I go this way, my whole earth is shifting this way now. So I changed my whole schematics in real time. And it's affecting everybody on their platform or their game. So the process to balance is your right foot is your left and your left foot is your right. But when you come together, it's right and left. Right? Direct and redirect, direct and redirect. And that's all it is in set positions of balance. Right? But that's you in the center of operation of its earth. That's you in the center that never leaves. Right? So you understand the mind itself is everything of itself. It's all creative. Creating this of outside, creating this from inside, outside, outline, center, line, position, location, centers, A over track, B over C, C lines of equals lines of D, D equals lines of A position lines of C. But you don't leave the center. So the more you get specific, the more you understand how to connect to your earth. You are the earth. You are the air, the water, and the fire, and the heart, guys. You are the fifth element. But see, you're infinitive items. Understand the purpose is to understand how to use it in constellation. So if I'm looking this way, my whole earth is shifting this way now. If I go this way, my whole earth is shifting this way. So it's affecting everybody on the board. You understand? Now you have to coordinate that and put everything back in sequence. Because you're not just shifting yourself, you're shifting everything that's on the board itself, which is everybody else's earth. So you're connected to everybody's earth and they're connected to all the levels of you. And that's a higher lines of frequencies that comes in that communication setting, part of acceleration lines of space and time. What's every lines of provision, location of system, all through attractions. Right? So you're not just connected to each other, you're connected to each other through earth and modifications, the eyes and windows of the soul. So if I stand up, my earth is shifting up. If I sit down, my earth is shifting down. If I go hula hoop, my earth is doing this in tractions, all through setting, all through operation. And that's what you're doing. You're affecting everything you say, everything you do, everything you connect to, everything you touch, everything you get in position of hearing and seeing and feeling. Okay? If I move my hand up like this, my earth is shifting over to the left. If I put my right hand over this, my earth is shifting over to the right. But whoever's in your mind frame, family circuits, friends, relations, anything that track locations, you're also shifting them in their simulator that's already set up for them. So they don't get confused of where they are in body capacitor, knowing exactly how to identify that in their own space of modulations already existing in the sim of going to school. So now you guys are coming to your own design, which is the earth itself. So it's very important to understand that. Okay? You're not grounding yourself to the earth. You are the earth. But you have to bounce to the center of you, which is the mind itself. That puts everything all together. And all set location to abstractions, right? So if I'm doing this and I'm doing that, my earth is going here, my earth is going there. So it's affecting everyone now because we're tethered and attached to each other now. So remember, you're not looking at the center of the earth. You are the earth. You are the air. You are the fire. You are the water. And you are the heart. You are the space. You are the time. And the more you go beyond that, the more you see lines of modification of the mind itself. That brings everything in projection. Okay? Through modification, a pixelation or a hologram. All through film strip. Okay? And that's a level you guys are at now. Okay, out of, and now you're in position of own design, operating your bandwidth of your streaming of space and time through your networks, where your body gets in that position. If I move the chair like this, everything around me is now changed. So I slide across my screen, my earth, and everybody else did that same thing. So we're all center of everything. That modifies everything inside, that puts everything outside of projection, that puts everything into position of void from outside and looking from inside line positions. So you don't need to identify yourself inside because you're already existing. All you have to do is understand how to use the void that you are, which is the outer space of creating. Outer space of creating is a false narrative, which is not in position, locates its positions until you understand how to perceive consciousness. So if you're not perceiving consciousness, you are just observing everything. Okay? Just observing. Nothing else, right? Until you bring the consciousness in, you're just observing everything, right? So you have no control now of your body. The weather is controlling your body through remote control. That's where it comes into mind is stillness. They have their operation, you have yours. But in that position, you have to treat how that works is by surrendering to its current of its flow, because you can't beat anything into submission until you understand how to modify yourself of your own space and time of configuration or anything attractions. So waving your hands in the air, doing this, doing that, it's affecting everything in the earth. You're not looking at the earth, you're not grounded in the earth. You are the earth. And what's inside is very important. What you are is the intel. That becomes all formations of space and time. In that relation existing and everything happening all at once. Okay? In a 24 setting. Okay? That's already done through its equations. That's already gone through it 7 days a week. That's already gone through it 3 months. That's already gone through it 6 months. That's already gone through its year. It's all done. But now you have to understand how to communicate to the own design. How you're walking, how you're talking, how you're moving, how you're jogging, how you're getting up, how you're sitting down, how you're sleeping, how you're going here, how you're driving. So if we get a true understanding how this all works, then we understand how you guys are connected to your fifth elements. But everybody's connected to themselves. And you're connected to everything else, which is everyone else. That's the connection setting that puts all communication positions of your earth in traction. Right? So that puts all communication system of settings. Now everybody is in center line. And your intel is trying to understand attractions. That's you in setting. That's where everybody is. That's a simulation. That's it right there. So if you move over here, you're shifting your earth over here. You move over here, you're shifting Earth over here. Okay? If you go here, if you go north, you're shifting here. Okay? You go this way, south, your Earth goes there all at once. Remember, it's 4 frames in volume. So you're going north, east, west, and south. Right? So it's basically understanding north, east, west, and south, north, east, west, and south, north, east, west, and south, news, 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 and 4 settings of data, process that communicates the system. All through traction, all through locations. Right? So once you stand to merge in locations, the body itself becomes its earth itself, which is its own design. Just becomes the earth. Because the body's already traveled through its mechanisms. Just body containment. So you're just the earth now. So the body's been everywhere. It's formulated its own steady map, its own coordinates, own lines of longitude and latitude and set position lines of travel. So once you identify that, then you can travel out. Okay? Which is the void. Hard lines of sequence, new lines calculates the setting, new screen adaptations of flux. Earth goes here. Okay? So you're just creating them. Okay? But you're in this simulation, you're still going through school. But you're just expanding. Okay, because you recognize you are the earth now. You are the air, you are the wind, you are the factors, you're the screen adaptation of the system, all the attractions, the calculation of the fire, location to its heart, and all the suppositions. Okay? That's own design, the earth itself, right? But you have to identify your intel. How the intel basically can turn itself into anything. It sees everything that it sees. It can turn into a cup. It can turn into a lamp. But it jumps back out. And now it's communicating to you because it recognizes your frequencies. That's confirmation of balance when you come to that setting. Because you're directing your system of redirect and understanding how to see that. And all that information system, the grounds. All that communicates to its powers and its atmosphere, space, and time. But you've got to understand how this all works in its position of its intel. It becomes its own earth of its own system, guys. All through travel, all through traction. Okay? So, get a little bit more understanding now how this all works now. How you finally get to start to see yourself through your own design, not of design. The of design is basically understand the basics, how to use the grounds, the powers, the atmospheres, the highways, the modems, the Wi-Fi's, the satellites, and towers. And understand how to use that in your network systems. Is truly understanding how to use that through your own operation of your own space, of your own time. Beyond the system, you are the system. I am the system. So that's more powerful than you can imagine. And with great power becomes great responsibility, right? So these are the things that everybody's coming into to identify that settings. But the one thing that doesn't change is you living, existing, and happening everything all at once. All timelines all at once. That puts all lines, course centers. The process of the avatar knows exactly what it's doing in that position that's already done through pi, done through pi, done through pi. Direct, redirect, direct, redirect, direct, redirect. So to get out of that loop, so it doesn't get confused where it is and traction through its back or anything, location of its entanglement, it expands. So it expands, expands, and expands, and expands. So it comes in this way, comes in this way, creates levels, creates diversions, creates dimensions, creates galaxies, creates new universes, creates new highways, right? So it expands and expands and expands and expands. Okay? All through longitude and latitude of streaming, guys. And it's all in your network systems. So the more you open up your mind, whoa, everything comes in collaboration or partnership that you have to identify, that you've already done through inclusion. Okay? So it's one way to look at that in all information system is everything inside puts everything in projection outside, which you already know it's attractions. Okay? So, understanding that position, location of its system, all through calculations, right? All right, that's it. See you guys in 5.